Good evening, all. Today I'm going to share with you some basic techniques and practices that we can use for watercoloring techniques. Okay, so this is a small lesson, it's a small, short introductory lesson about watercolor techniques. You will learn some basics of watercoloring. So, I will be explaining about the painting brush, the colors, the strokes, and what kind of paper, and simple designs. So, before we go into the brush stroke, color papers, everything, we must know what is a watercolor, how it's different from the rest of it. So, watercolor means from the name itself, watercolor. It's water based, it's very transparent. It's a transparent paint. So, it's very light and it's easy to start. Okay, for anyone who want to engage in artistic life or want to enter into a professional artist career, you must. I think it's the best to start with watercoloring. So, before you start, we need some materials. So, the materials you need for watercolor paintings are the first one, watercolor paints. Then we need a watercolor paper, brushes. I prefer round brush. Then clean water and tissue or cloth. It's better if you have a set of masking tape, and you can easily find masking fluid also, and some set of different types of brush. In the picture you can see flat brush, mop brush, pointed brush, and round brush. What color of paints you can use? In the market, different kinds of watercolors are available. It's available in the form of watercolor cakes, watercolor tube, and you can see we need a palette to mix the color, preferably white. So if it's white for a beginner, it's easy to understand what color you get by the end after mixing. So also you can find students watercolor and professional watercolor, and there are many cheap watercolor also. So if you want to begin to study something, I would say start with good quality watercolor rather than using a student's watercolor. Okay, but not too expensive. Don't invest too expensive watercolor because you are learning. Once you learn and you practiced much, you can go for it. And what is watercolor paper? We cannot use thin papers for watercolor painting because we are using water, and adequate amount of water is being used, and so there's a chance of the paper to get wet wet and stretched and crinkled. So it's so you know, it the painting won't appear much good. So we use thick paper that absorbs water, so it also prevents tearing and bending of paper. And it's we get watercolor sketchbooks in the market, watercolor papers. It's thick and it has a different texture than a normal drawing sheet. Basic brush strokes. So we have round brush. You can see in the picture how a round brush look like, and this is one of the universal brush used in watercolor painting. And by, can you see the blue color stroke? It's made with the round brush, and you can see the picture below. So it's a method of practicing how to use the round brush. So if you are using strokes like this on like the brown strokes, you can see like a wavy brown strokes, you can understand how to give pressure. What will happen if you give little pressure and means different pressure? What will happen if you are applying different pressure? How the strokes will appear. So add strokes like this and try to leave space in between. So practice like this so you can gain control of your brush and you can understand how this brush can provide fine lines and thicker lines. We can use this simple means a single brush can be used to complete an entire painting, but it needs skill and practice. Okay, so how we develop skill by practicing. Let's see. Next one, flat brush. So this is the picture of flat brush and you can see how we use this to spread the paint mainly. Next, angled brush. So angled brush, you can see the shape of the angled brush and it's similar to flat brush but the tip is little bit angled. And with angle brush we can create very different interesting shapes. Also we can use two colors at the same time to create something floral, and this is possible only with this angle brush. Next, fan brush. You can see in the picture the first one is the fan brush and it's used to mainly for the vegetations. Then the mop brush. This mop brush is very helpful in spreading the colors, blending it. And the next thing we need is a spray bottle. This is an excellent tool for wetting our medium. Also, we can use to spread the color by spraying on the colored watercolored surface. I will show a small video on how to use the round brush. See the tips, if you touch like this, the strokes vary. So the texture and the stroke coming out depends on how we hold it, how much pressure we give it. Practice by doing these small techniques to understand how you can control the brush and how different variety of textures or patterns you can create using brush. And also the amount of water that you hold in the brush matters a lot. If you dip the brush in too much water and you didn't wipe off excess water, the paint will be lighter, thinner, more thinner. And if you want darker color or darker stains, use little water and more of the paint. See, more water, lighter color, less water, darker color. So always you have to test in another extra sheet of paper before painting to the main paper. So we have some basic techniques. We use wet on wet technique. The first picture, this picture shows wet on wet technique. And the second one is wet on dry. So you get more figurative techniques over here is on the wet on dry, and it's here the first two picture, it's so blurred. And then we have another technique, dry brush. So in watercolor we must use both wet on wet and wet on dry like together, so it can create a very nice effect. Mistakes happen, okay, when in during the process of learning mistakes happen. So you don't have to worry about that because we are in the process of learning. What we have to do in watercolor, we put layers over layers. So you must wait for the layer to dry before putting another layer. You must know about the color palette wheel. So this help artists understand how the colors relate to each other and how they behave when mixed with water. And we must know this exact the relationship during the watercoloring. Why? To understand how the when the colors are mixed, what's the color, resulting color. To understand the primary, secondary, and tertiary color, and what we get once we mix them. Then, to avoid muddy colors by seeing opposite complementary color. And to create a good painting. So see here, so you can see yellow orange and the opposite is blue violet. So these are contrasting color. But if we paint yellow orange and yellow, we get like a monochrome effect. Okay, because they are in the same color range. And if we mix yellow orange and blue violet, of course we get a muddy color. So to prevent that, we use the color palette. We can make our own color palette. So it's actually a best exercise for watercolor beginners. So you can learn about the colors and how the colors behave when mixed, and what will happen if the paint is mixed with too much water or if the water is less. So let's mix and build confidence in the watercolor. And we can use this watercolor wheel as a reference for future paintings. How can we make it? So these are some steps that how can we make it. First you draw a circle. Usually we divide into 12 sections. And then use the primary colors like red, yellow, blue. Then comes the secondary colors. And then the last one, the tertiary colors. And then you can label each other as you see here. See here how to do, as use this color palette as a reference image. We are using the main colors like clockwise and then leave some space for the mixing colors. And then as we use the coloring chart to create vibrant images, here the first picture you can see this we have used in 3 to 5 colors, but each of these colors are next to each other. See, we have used in green and yellow most probably. So here when you look at the color palette, green, yellow, it's next to each other. And in the picture of the flamingo, we have used contrasting colors, pink and blue. Let's see. pink is over here and the blue is over here. It's also very close to each other, but it's contrasting. See, we can say they are equal distance from each other. Then the complementary comes to highlight the main character. So split complementary. And here exactly opposite colors are used here. This is split complementary. See the palette again. So blue and the orange. And then the other picture we have red and the green. Okay, red and green is very opposite to each other. So use the palette for reference. So thank you. This is my first introductory lesson. In the next lesson, next free session, I will show you some techniques how to draw trees in watercolor painting. In the next lesson, I will teach you different types of vegetation that we can create using round brush, just using round brush. Okay, hope you will also join in my next free lesson of watercolor painting. Thank you.